I think some stories also tell us a lot about our own society. And sometimes when we're living our lives, we are so focused on this scale of living like local and our lives, and we forget the bigger scale of things. So I think some stories are really good at like pulling us back and showing us, okay, look at this, the world is like this. Like documentaries are great at doing that and showing us how, the system is working, things that are wrong, social injustice, how like surveillance is happening, how we have censorship, how we have all those things. And that's why it's so crucial for us to have freedom to express ourselves.
And I think it's nice when you mention documentaries, because it not only shows us this other dimension of things, this other perspective, but also a different way of living. Sometimes we didn't even consider that our lives could be lived in a different way, or that people do live in a different way and they face different challenges than us. So having this ability to give the voice to people who have not been heard before is really important, and let them express themselves and let them show who they truly are to the rest of the world. Even though they have not been represented properly yet, they can have, they can be empowered to convey their message once and for all, like especially with documentaries, reaching out people who are far away from the mainstream media.
Yes. And I think that's why we were talking about this before. It's important to bring more diversity into storytellings in general. And that's why we started this conversation asking, what kind of story do you have to tell? Because you have a life that no one else has. And do you see yourself represented in media? Do you see yourself in literature? Do you see yourself in movies, TV shows, etc.? If not, if you don't, maybe what's the reason, we should think about that.
Yeah, that's really, really important. I myself, I don't think my story has been told yet, because of the country I was born, because of my ethnicity, because of my thoughts, because of myself, I've never seen any character who truly represented where I came from and what were my experiences in the world. So I believe many people, they have not seen their stories told in the big screens yet. And that's a little bit frustrating, but it's also beautiful, because it means that there's so many other things that can be shown and that can be produced and that can be created from people who have not had the chance before, especially because everyone knows, but in the entertainment industry, still there are a lot of white people, who are writing the stories, who are directing the stories, and who are acting them or writing them in terms of books and novels and all that. So yeah, doing our part, if we can put more inclusivity and more diversity into those fields, would be extremely enriching, I think.
I agree, 100%. And you told me about, for example, when people are doing the cast of a movie or TV show, and everything is based on the script. And if the script is not meant to fit a person with a different ethnic background than white, Caucasian, it's really hard for even like the person who works with that to choose a different actor or actress. And this tells a lot. I think that's why I myself would like to write someday those things, because I know that there's so many stories to be told and so many different perspectives that hasn't been explored yet. But I think it's nice that slowly things are improving, because when we were young, I couldn't see myself anywhere. And nowadays we see more Asian people on the screens, and even like mixed people, even though still minority. But in the past was like, no one.
Mm-hmm.
And if
I
you were,
remember,
like the very stereotypical type.
I remember when we were really young, we were kind of interested in acting. That
Yeah.
when we were like young, and then you asked me, but like, even if we do acting, like, there's gonna be no roles for me.
Yeah.
And that's the point, you know. It's not about like the way you look. It's about bringing this diversity into the scripts, into the stories that are told, and not like having to change yourself to look more white or more Western, you know. Just because there was no space for people like us.
And even like you said, become more this, more that. Our case is funny because we can be a bit of shape shifting, I would say, depending where we are. Because like in Asia, people don't think I'm Asian. They don't think. But if I'm any other country, they're like, yes, you are at least half Asian for sure. And I mean, we can play around with those things, but I think for some people it's very obvious who they are or their ethnicity and all those things. So it would be very nice to see more diversity. I told you about the movie, I think Minari, the name, about this Korean family that went to the United States in the 80s, and I found really touching and really beautiful. And it's interesting to see how even in the United States is a completely American production, but the movie is mostly in Korean. And that's something that I haven't seen before, like a foreign language movie in the United States. They'll have to read captions, subtitles, everyone.
But you know, that's super important because you're representing a population the way they truly are, you know. So that's why I think when you talk about, for example, you're an American production, when you talk about people who are not Americans, you have to be careful to represent them well, because you're showing them in a certain way. So it has to be in a way that is not stereotyped, because that's how many people are going to be seeing them. You know, sometimes for example, people know a lot of stories and movies that are based on the US or UK. So even if someone makes a stereotype movie, nobody will think like, oh, all Americans are like this or all British are like this. No. But if you make a story that is stereotyped about a minority population or about a country that has not been represented well in the West, they're going to be stereotyped. So we got to be really, really careful, I think, when we deal with different cultures and even like historic periods, because people don't have a lot of information on those as well. So when you don't portray them as well as you could, perhaps people will have like misinformation instead of being more educated on that.
Yes. I think very interesting in the lines what you said, the author Shimamanda Adichie, she had a TED talk exactly about that, the danger of a single story, if I'm not mistaken, that's the name. And exactly like this. Like why people stereotype certain types of people because they only have one storyline and instead of multiple. She gives the example like if you write a story about a serial killer in the United States, you're not going to think everyone's like that because you know it's not the case. And the same should be about other countries as well and other people.
Mm-hmm.